have it all set up here, but I'm still going to need to see it. So let's just check and make sure everyone out in Vancouver and Marcel can still see me. Good. You're looking at the side of my head. Not as fun. All right, so this is my presentation about me and GDC and sort of a combination of everything. So that weird game guy. So let's take a little spin on here to our first level 1. So a brief history of my games. And this is sort of a brief history of how I got to this point as well. So that was my first console. That's the Atari Video Pinball. That was sort of my first introduction to video games. It was just like a paddle and a little button, and you just played Breakout on it, really. It wasn't really even pinball, per se. And it was fun. That was kind of the thing that hooked me. I mean, that was we'd gather around the TV, the whole family, and we'd play this little machine. So then we moved up in a way. We couldn't actually afford an Atari 2600 at the time, so the kids down the block had it, and I was at their house pretty much constantly. So all I remember from my childhood is crab apples, which they had in the backyard, and we'd run out and grab to snack, and this console. So yeah, I mean, obviously slightly more evolved. And then we finally, when we could afford a console, we got one called the Sega Master System, which was the competitor to the really popular one, which was the Nintendo NES console, which is probably one of the most popular consoles of all time, most iconic consoles of all time. We had the other guy. We had the beta of consoles, but we still loved it like crazy. And as a fun little side story, my sister used to play the gun game, like the equivalent of Duck Hunt on this thing, so much that she got a mark on her nose because she'd hold the gun pressed to her nose to aim. And for weeks, she had this little red ring from where the back of the gun pressed against her nose, because the only way she knew how to aim. So then, my wonderful Nana bought me an Atari 800 XL. And this is the same thing with all the same stuff. And you can see there we've got the cartridges at the bottom. So it was a computer, but it was still cartridge-based. We also had up here, you can kind of see some stacked up cassette drives. And this was the first chance that I had to program anything. And you actually had to plug in a cartridge that was the basic interpreter module cartridge. And that was how you programmed. And that was when I went, wait, I can make video games? And I was probably about 12 at the time. And this feeling's never really left me. And it's not just video games, but like that every time I see something that I can make stuff with, I'm like, wait, I can make robots? I can make whatever. And so that's when things kind of came into focus a little bit for me, and they kind of started realizing, oh, well, all this is useful for more than just play. I can make things for other people to play. So I set about making my very first game using Atari Basic. And this is actually a page from the manual that I used to program from. And you can see here it had a relation of piano keyboard to musical scale, which is what you'd use to make music within your game. And you had all your sound statements, your system controls. It was Atari Basic, and it was a very basic language. And with it, I made my first game, which was a text-based fighting game. At the age of 12, I thought this was pretty awesome. So that was essentially what the game looked like, is do you want to punch, kick, or block? And then your opponent would pick a randomized thing, and it was rock, paper, scissors in text punching and kicking form. Then I kind of did that for a large number of years of my childhood. I created little text-based games and played Zork and other text-based games. And the funny thing is I actually moved to 3D and Flash pretty early on. This wasn't built in Flash. This was built in a language called Dark Basic. And it was a very, very simple, basic language that you could create 3D games in. And this was one of my first ever games that I put out on the web that anyone took any sort of notice of. And it was called Beer Run. And it was two guys at the top of a hill racing to the bottom in sleds. And the first one to the bottom of the hill, last one to the bottom of the hill had to buy the beer. And that was it. That was the whole game. But it was actually fairly sophisticated in its own way. I created a level builder where if you painted in your paint program in just black and white, that would generate the hill, with white being high and black being low. So you could actually generate all of the terrain that way in the game. Then I moved on to one called Xenotrader, which was a way too ambitious game. And this one, you can see some of my ships flying by here. I was still doing some 3D, but now I was doing 3D in Flash, which was a pain in the butt at the time. But the funny thing is on the far left there's a little link that says Protector. That was actually probably one of my most successful games ever. It was a sub-game to this, and all it was one of these ships flying sideways and trying to destroy meteors before they hit the mothership. And that one got picked up by a couple of sites, and I ended up, I think probably by the time I was done, I was well over 600,000 plays in 6 months. So it was great, and it kind of taught me that sometimes all of the extra stuff there that I had going on isn't what people want. They just want to shoot at some meteorites. Now, the other spin-off from this, which is funny, is that I created a game that was the races in the game, and all you did was it went back to that very first one, that punch, kick, block. It went back to that, and it got picked up in Germany, and the site's still live, though their database has gone down. But this is now 12, 13 years old, and it was every now and then I'd log in and I'd check on it. I created this and it was a weird thing. I created this game for a company in India who was creating it for a web developer in Germany so that they could showcase their talents. So, yeah, that's right. I was a Canadian outsourcer to India for Germany, which was a lot of fun. So, yeah. And then that led to a series of puzzle games. I did Bubble Fun on PC Puzzles. You can definitely see the 90s web influence there. Tilt, which was another one on the same site. And then I started getting into doing educational games. This is just one of them. This was from the city of Surrey's. And this is actually starting to get a little bit more recent. This was almost a top-down Zelda-style game where you explored the city of Surrey City Hall. And as this little owl, and yeah. And then last year I did one game a month, though probably it would be closer to, I guess, 0.6 games a month, because I only did 7 games. But still, 7 games in a year was a pretty daunting task. And yeah, and that was a lot of fun. And some of you who were here saw one of them at least, or maybe 2 of them, the Dungeon Discs game on the table. And yeah, so that's kind of a history of my game making stuff. So let's spin on here. Hopefully everyone in Vancouver, I haven't actually checked in on them, make sure they're seeing the stream, but yeah, so a lot of the ones that I did as like white label games where I just developed them for other people, I was just paid for my time. And so I did for the City of Surrey ones, they came to me and they just said, what was that? No, unfortunately not. Most of my games I've created out of passion and not really considered a whole lot of the monetization end of it, which was, I don't really regret, because they were fun. And now that I'm older, I can monetize things. So
Vancouver can see you.
good. All right. So now level 2 is changing how we see, and this came out of the Game Developers Conference that I attended in March, and this is sort of one of the big focuses of the conference was moving towards virtual reality, alternate reality, basically changing how we interact with games and how we see our current reality through the games in some cases. So here's a couple of the technologies that were on display there. This is Sony's new virtual reality headset called Morpheus. I don't know how many people are familiar with Oculus Rift, which was kind of one of the more well-known ones of late, and that's basically you strap them to your helmet, to your head, it detects your head movements and generates what you should be seeing in the 3D world based on your head movements. So very sci-fi stuff. This is a new one out of Canada that's called the Totem VR, and you can actually see on this one now that's starting to have the pass-through. So those are actually cameras so that you can have the game interspersed with the real world. It detects where you're moving your head, and this was a big focus at the Game Developers Conference. Is a lot of people, I don't know how much the market wants it, but the developers definitely want.
So is that like VR?
Yeah, it's a combination of AR and VR, really. So with a lot of the newer devices, they can shut off the cameras and then you're just in a completely virtual world, or they can turn on the cameras and then you're in an altered reality world or alternate reality.
So when you play with these, I was thinking, do you need to be in a gymnasium or something? Because let's say I live here, I'm going to hit all these walls, right?
Well, and that's where, for most of them, when you just have the helmet on, and there's no cameras enabled, you're just sitting at you're sitting in one place and you're just looking around. Or in some cases, they have a giant, they have like a treadmill with a ring around it, and you stand in the middle of it, and it detects where you're walking. And but in the cases where they turn on the cameras, you can actually see what's around you, and the game becomes a part of your environment. And this was brilliantly executed in the case of this one, which was the Sulon headset, which I actually got a chance to demo. And that one just takes a cell phone and it snaps it in, and then it splits your display in two and creates the virtual reality environment using the processor on your cell phone. And it was really, really impressive. Like, they put me in a little room and they turned it on and a portal appeared floating in midair in front of me, and they gave me some little controllers that I could use to shoot at things coming out of the portal, just some cubes and stuff. And then they remapped the entire room to virtual reality, and I couldn't see the real walls anymore, but the walls in the game were in the exact same place as the walls in my environment. So I could walk around and I knew where the walls were, but some of them had new windows in them that I could see through to, like, all sorts of fun stuff. Like, there was a big, like, bio tank with some guy floating in it, and there was a zombie pounding on the tank trying to break it and get at the guy inside. And so, yeah, it was really, really neat. So this is, I mean, and I think that that's one of the things, is that the developers want this because right now this is whose hands it's in. And once you've kind of experienced that as a method of play, it's really, really engaging, and it's really hard to deny the power of it. This is another one, really rough-looking prototype, but this one's called Cast AR, and this one, those beams on the top of it actually let you, basically, they project what you're seeing from your angle onto a surface, so you can have a single surface with multiple people around it, and they can all see it from the angle they're standing at. So if you take, for example, a board game, you're all looking at it as if you were looking at a board game. Now, why would you prefer this over a board game? Because things like animation, and so you can all see things rise up from it, and you all get that sort of perspective based on how you're looking, which is really, really cool, especially to old Dungeons and Dragons nerds like me, where you could actually have a full map and everyone gets to see the dungeon from their own angle and their little guys moving around in it. And so it becomes less of a singular experience and more of a group or family experience. All right, so the next trend that came out of GDC for me was changing how we interact with our computers and with our games. Oh, should we? Oh, here we go. So obviously, one of the big players in the game right now is Microsoft, and they did it with the Xbox 360. They're doing it with the Xbox One. This is the Kinect, and the Kinect basically detects everything within its field of vision and can interpret your body movements, your facial expressions, can listen to your voice commands, and can really take all of that data and put it into the virtual environment or the game. But they're not the only player. There's Soft Kinetic, which actually creates little ones that you can just hook up to your computer for a very low price. And it's the same sort of thing, not quite as robust, but lets you do things like that, obviously. This is called Nui Droid, and it's a software platform that lets you easily interpret people's movements within the 3D space and actually implement it. So that would be for Android, using a standard Android camera, but there's lots of other ones that are available for different platforms. Like I said, there's Soft Kinetic for PC. The Kinect also has a PC version that's just released. And then the Qualcomm Vuforia is a really, really cool one in that it uses AR as well through your phone to be able to map 3D objects. And what it actually does is this is showing a toy that it can recognize that specific toy. And then, so this would actually be a physical toy, and through your phone you can actually modify it and add things onto it using your phone. So it's a really neat environment, and it's a really neat platform to be able to play with and to program on. Now, some of these, obviously, I chose, like this one I specifically chose for us because I really feel like, beyond toys or whatever, the fact that it can recognize any object that you predefine. So you import a 3D object, and it can just recognize that in the environment. So for Superfly, we could have, it could recognize a specific lure, or it could recognize a specific whatever we add in there. So there's all sorts of different things, and you could then have things show up, like a person could hover over a lure and it could tell you where the best places in Alberta to fish are with it, or whatever, right? And it could actually show you a 3D map that tells you where to go, and so it's a really powerful technology, and I was really impressed by it. And then there's a lot of add-ons. This is for for Apple devices, so for iPhone primarily. And all it does is, you can see these blue areas. That's the back and the side. It adds in the ability to touch the back of your iPhone so that your fingers aren't in the way of the experience. And it also allows you to swipe along the side for some additional functionality. And that's another thing that was really coming out, is that developers really are pushing towards even being able to interact with our phones in different ways that are less invasive or intrusive, I guess. And then there's a whole lot of like Fitbit and wearable technology, and this was a big thing that a lot of people wanted to play with. Nike was there, and then the one that I kind of had gone, one of the people I wanted to see was the Mile, and I've got a developer unit here. So, and that just hooks up to your arm and allows you to, it detects your muscle movements as well as having an accelerometer for tilt and shift. So it's just a new way to interact with our computers. It can detect when you swipe, closed fist, open hand, individual fingers. So it's a really cool sort of way to interact with it. They sent me a dev unit. I haven't had a whole lot of time to program anything for it. That's the new version that's on the screen right now, and that one's being released soon. All right, so level 4, I've got GAS, which is Games as a Service. And this is another thing that really was shifting this year, is not just games, but platforms as a service. The Unreal Engine, which you can see is there's a rendering from the Unreal Engine, is now $19 a month, plus slight commission on your video game. But the platforms all went from having, fairly large initial payments to get into to low monthly payments. Unity is going to be $75 a month, and Unity 5 is going to allow us to export to WebGL, so you won't even need a plugin in the browser to get 3D that good. That actually is on their Unity site. That's rendered in WebGL in the browser. It looks gorgeous. It moves well, and it's a really engaging experience. Works on mobile, and yeah. So this is one of the things that's really exciting me for us. Is there's all of these things like the Goo engine, which I've been using, which is again 3D in the browser. It runs on common technologies, HTML, JavaScript. It's really easy to build for, and they just launched their ads platform where you can start creating HTML5 3D ads instead of using Flash. So allows your ads to hit mobile a lot better, and really, allows you to create some engaging little experiences within a smaller space, a smaller stage. Oh, and that one, Goo Engine, by the way, is free at the moment, so because they're just coming out, so it's really cool. The other thing is that I really enjoyed was how integrated analytics and all of the testing tools are becoming, both to games, and a lot of this spills over to just the web in general. There's the Google Management API for Google Analytics, which allows you to do A/B testing in your app or in your web experience. And this basically just lets you go, okay, well, you can actually say, for this set group of people, I'm going to test this button in this location, and you just set that up in the environment in Google, and it does the changes on your site, and then it just runs an experiment, and whichever one wins, that change is just applied to your website, and you don't have to go in there and recode it. You pick things that can be moved around, recolored, reskinned, however you want to do it. It works in apps, works on the web, and it's just a really cool way of finding out what actually does and doesn't work, and using real numbers to determine that on your website or in your game. Salter was another one that was the same sort of thing. You can see here they allow you to go in and set up experiments on pricing, see how your pricing of in-game purchases affects like your sales. And so you can say, well, at 50 cents I'm selling 1.5 times as many, so it doesn't quite make up for the 99 cents. And it just, again, you just start the experiment and you say, this is the outcome I want, and you let the code do its thing, and it automatically serves it out to people and makes sure that whichever result is the most profitable for you is the one that comes back and is used in your code. Yes?
Do you feel confident the whole thing with all these?
Yeah, and actually, Garrett is also pretty familiar, as I understand, with the Google Management API. And again, Delta DNA, same sort of thing. This is this revolves around game performance dashboards, that sort of stuff. Again, a lot of this stuff applies across to apps, which I know we're not doing a whole lot of right now, but good to know. All right, almost through. Go to a level 5. So this is just an add-on. This is something that I encourage everyone to check out. I'll be sending around the logins a little bit later, but one of the cool things that came out of GDC this year is access to what they call the GDC Vault. And this is all the talks that have ever been done at a GDC over about the last 10 years. You can watch them for free, and you just log in, pick your thing, and away you go. A couple of the ones that I found that I recommend, and again, I'll include these in the email, but Leading Without Power, Direct Authority was a really good one. And this is just about kind of managing projects within the scope of an environment where you don't necessarily have all the power. And that's, I found that was a really good one because especially, when you're working with clients, you don't necessarily have the power to make the decisions you want to make. And so this was an interesting talk about that. Producer Bootcamp, People Management Survival Guide was a good one. Again, these are more from the management side, but we also had, there was one from last year called New Opportunities with Wearable Technology, which was a really interesting talk. And then as far as kind of from telling a story, there was an evocative storytelling, Write Less, Reveal More lecture that I found was really good. These were kind of the ones that I attended or the ones that I've seen since that I felt were really like the speaker really knew what they were talking about, and there was some good information in there that kind of almost anyone could use. And that's it. That's the end of the presentation. There's just a whole lot of empty field beyond here, I believe. Hooray! Okay. Thanks. So I'm going to switch over here. Oh, actually, if we want, this might be. Let me just switch this. Because I really, really enjoyed this one. Okay, so this is that object recognition for toys. I'm going to include this just because it was such a cool thing that I thought we could use for something. So yeah, it's just a neat way of kind of taking a physical thing and extending it into the digital realm, and I felt like that's something that would be pretty fun and pretty cool for us to do. Of course, the thing they never actually show in that video is the child playing with their toy, but still, kind of neat.